Voz do Arquipélago.
Yeah, as you know, this interview is for our newspaper. It's called Voz do Archipelago. It's a very new newspaper. We have 4 months. We start, yes. So we are making our way to make a new kind of journalism here in Cape Verde, and we hope that everything will go okay. Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
I'm gonna start with you, Julius. You will take part in the official ceremony celebrating the anniversary of Cape Verde independence, representing your family and the Cape Verdean diaspora in United States. What does this mean to you?
Well, it's a full circle for me. 1975, I was 25 years old, so I'm 75 now, and I was invited to the first independence. I was a member of the American Committee for Cape Verde, Cuba,
No.
with Ray Almeida, and we left Boston from the Episcopal Archdiocese on Joy Street, David Silver and I, and we flew into South. We went to Cape Verde as two young men to enjoy the independence. David had been working with the PAIGC when it was setting up the mission at the UN. So he was very involved. And then I got in, as I said, involved with Ray Almeida and the American Committee for Cape Verde. And we gathered items here in the United States to send as a gift. We put raw cotton on board. We put rice. We put school supplies together. We had so many items. We had 40 tons of items that we were giving to Cape Verde as a gift for the first independence. And so I wanted to go over and meet them along with Ray and David, Tony Ramos, Michael Frenchman, and Joe Alves. That was the group. And when we got to Cape Verde, the first person that David introduced me to, the first person we got to meet with was Sobino de Luz. He was just the general of the armies that day, and we were the first American Cape Verdeans that he told about his appointment. From that point on, it was just a glorious time. I was treated like royalty. A story that I tell, it happened when we flew into Sao. We had to stay there overnight because a plane was coming in to pick up everybody and take them to Praia. And we waited most of the evening and into the next morning, and we still hadn't got out of Sao. So David could speak Creole better than I could, and he started saying, "What's going on? Well, I went to Praia." And somebody said, "Oh, there was a lot of people coming in from Holland, so we sent the plane to Salvi's tent." I said, "How do you do that? We had a plane ticket." So everybody was laughing, and then the head of the bank at Sal said, "Listen, you guys just sit right here. I got a plane that's going to take you." So we got on this plane, not knowing that it was Aristides Pereira coming in from either Mozambique or Angola, I'm not sure, but he was just coming in, and he had a lot of young men on board. Luis Cabral was on board. So we got on board, and we went into Praia. And so when we got off of the plane, for security purposes, they said, you two guys, David and Julius, you get off first. We got off the plane, and a bunch of reporters from around the world were out there, and they were taking our pictures as if we were important people, and we were just two young guys from America and enjoying it. So I just says, no, you got it wrong. You need to speak to in the play. And Aristides in there and Luisa's in there. You need to speak to them. So that was our introduction when we arrived. And after that, it was just nonstop beauty. We were so filled with excitement because Cape Verde was now going to be independent. It was about 3 or 4 days before, and we saw the Portuguese army leave. They came from Praia Mar. They were leaving for the airport, and we just hung out with a lot of freedom fighters. Lionel Miranda, Manuel Rodrigues, Lala. We stayed with them at the Institute de Solidaridad, and it's just a pleasure. I can go on. Would you like me to go on?
Yes, yeah.
I'll fast forward to just before independence. I was back and forth at the institute, and I was going down from the plateau back to the institute, and I saw this Cape Verdean woman walking up, and I looked at her. She looked at me. We smiled, and I said, "I'm sure that this person is connected to me in some way." I just let it go. And so the next day, it came time for independence. We all gathered up at the plateau, and the General Assembly was happening. They were choosing the party responsibles and making up the cabinet. And then all of the principals started coming out because they were getting ready for the announcement. It's now about 11:30 in the evening, and I'm with Linnell and Manuel, and we're on the street in the plaza by the Cochita. It was called the Cochita. I think it was a small coffee shop, and then at midnight, Aristides announced "Povo de Cabo Verde, Liberdade," and everybody went crazy. It was just a fun evening. This gentleman, Oviedo Martins. He was apparently the poet laureate at the point. I don't know, but he kept berating me in the coffee shop. He's saying, "How come I didn't get back to him? How come I didn't write to him?" And someone had to tell him in Portuguese, "No, this is a gentleman from America. He looks like somebody you know, but he's not that individual." And so we struck up a conversation, and he told me about his situation in how he had been treated in the concentration camp and so forth, and it was very tragic. But that evening, Mr. Britto, his name is Oladio Britto. He was apparently head of the communications, and he saw me standing there, and he says, "Get in the car." He had a small little car, and he had a tape recorder in the back seat, and he had a monitor in the front. He says, "Hold this monitor up. We're going to go around the plaza, and you're going to show the pictures to everybody of the General Assembly and them making the government." And we just kept driving. The people would crowd around the monitor, and they would look at it, and then we keep moving. And it was just a big celebration. Everybody's doors were open. When you're walking on the streets in Praia at the plateau, you could just walk into somebody's house because they were having manchupo or whatever, and festivals. It was just exciting, very exciting.
And how many times you came to Cape Verde after this first trip?
I've been to Cape Verde 3 times. It'll be the fourth time. This will be my 5th time next week.
And what do you think about what you see when you come to Cape Verde after 15 50 years of independence?
Well, as I said, I've been there many times, well, several times, and I've seen the progress. Um, but what was most important in 1975 was when we sat around together. So for the freedom fighters or rail meter, I can't remember who, they said to me, what are you going to do when you get back to the United States now that we're independent? It was a very, very heavy question. And it was a little overwhelming for a 25-year-old uh, who didn't know how to respond. Here I was with men and women who put their life on the line for independence. And they're asking me, what am I going to do when I get home to express my gratitude for the independence? And when I came home, I found the project, the Ernestina, and I made that my goal because I knew that the Ernestina had no negative feelings. It wasn't political. It was just a very positive thing, and it represented so much of what we had gone through in coming from Cape Verde to the United States or to Europe. And that was my goal, to make sure that I worked to make the Ernestina a viable instrument so that every place it went in the world, they would learn about Cape Verde. Because every time the vessel came to a port, people would say, where's Cape Verde? What's Cape Verde? And because it was sailing and it's so beautiful, it really is a great ambassador for Cape Verde. What I expect when I go back at this time, I just expect a lot of pride, a lot of gratitude, and a lot of appreciation for the struggles that many, many, many Cape Verdeans went through to become independent.
Okay. Vanessa, what does it mean to you to see your brother representing your family at this event of the anniversary of the independence of Cape Verde?
It means a tremendous amount to me. I am honored through him, through his um, foresight as a young man, for his commitment as a man who has grown and communicated this passion to all of us. Julius and I are 9 years apart. I am Amia Kodes.
Me también.
So my version of what Julius described was growing up as a teenager, understanding that there was this very important mission and struggles for independence of our grandparents' homeland and our great grandparents' homeland. And so I launched it as a teenager, and when Julius traveled to Cape Verde, I was 16. And we were excited. We didn't have all of the social media and connections to really understand and be able to follow his journey with him. But he took with him all of our love and our passion for and our joy for what was happening. And so when the New York Times met him when he exited the plane, we saw the report in the New York Times that two young bearded Americans had disembarked from this plane, and the joy that they expressed about being there in that moment and the pride they had to be there in that moment brought us so much elation, because now we do, number one, they arrived safely, and number two, that they were part of this momentous time in Cape Verde history. And so I feel like for me, it's something that I've grown up with. And so all of us have continued to maintain connections with family in Cape Verde. Our great-grandparents emigrated in 1902. I should tell you the story of our great-grandparents. Our great-grandfather's name was Bernardino Arta Varela, and he came from Rubamanel. And he traveled in late 1800s, we think around 1875, on a whaling ship. And he left my great-grandmother and two children. One was 1 year old and one was 2 years old. And he was gone for 17 years, and they thought that he was lost at sea. What happened was he arrived in, eventually, after he circumnavigated the world, we think, he landed in Massachusetts, and he disembarked from the whaling ship and purchased a very, very large parcel of land, 300 acres. We still hold a portion of that property, and we still live there. All of my siblings and I and our family, many of whom will be traveling with us. And my great-grandfather decided that he would come back to Cape Verde and retrieve his daughters and his wife. And so when he managed to get back to Rubamanel, they were spontaneous because they were surprised. They thought he was dead.
Yeah.
There had been no communication. And the 1 year old was now 17, and the 2 year old was now 19. And he said, I've come to bring my whole family back to the United States. I have purchased land and we'll start a life in Massachusetts. And so the 19-year-old, whose name was Matilda, said, no, I can't leave. I have a boyfriend here. I have a life in Cape Verde. And so what she and her boyfriend did was they eloped. They got married. And so in order to keep the family intact, my great-grandfather said, okay, well, I'll bring everybody. So he brought his daughters, Anna, who was 17, Matilda, who was 19, and Matilda would be Julius and my grandmother.
Okay.
She would be the person that descended from. And so they managed to get to Brava, and they got on a schooner, very much like the Ernestina, which is part of why we feel through Julius such a connection to the Ernestina, because that is a symbol of how we arrived here. And so they with 60 other people, they got on this on this schooner with a very young, inexperienced captain who was only 25 years old. And they set sail. They were headed for the port of Providence. And about 4 weeks into the journey, they hit a storm. And the storm broke the main mast of the ship. And so it was essentially it was drifting. And so my great-grandfather tied Emily to the stump of the mast. And he said, if we go down, we'll go down as a family. And at around that same time, that very young captain became more and more despondent because he was responsible for all of these people. There was very little water, very little food. And so one of the crewmen was down below the deck, and he heard the captain blow his whistle. And when he blew his whistle, the mate went up on deck, and he saw the captain jump overboard. And he abandoned the ship. And so they drifted for several days. And my great-grandfather, because he had been a whaleman, was able to try to steer the ship somewhat. And around that time, an Italian ocean liner that was going to New York, headed to Ellis Island, saw this little tiny schooner, and the captain of the ocean liner stopped the ocean liner, and he dispatched crewmen and a tow line. They gave them water and food, and they towed them into New York, into Ellis Island. They were about 2 weeks away from the shore. So that's really how our family arrived. And we know that this is true because we researched it and we found in 1902 that there was a story written about them in the New York Times.
Yeah, a great adventure.
It was a great, but it shows you the perseverance, the sacrifice,
Yeah.
the struggle, the love, the work ethic, the passion that certainly we feel as a family, and we know other Cape Verdeans feel similarly. And so that is part of why we feel very strongly about returning to strengthen the connection that we have had for 123 years with Cape Verde, and with family that still lives in Payacarda and Rugamanel. And so we are, Julius and I, all of us, my brothers and I, have all been to Cape Verde. And now it's time for us to make sure that the generations continue.
Okay.
And we also feel, Julius, you don't know this, but we also feel this is homage to Julius as well. For having traveled as a young person as the very first one of our family to go back. And so we want to honor him in that passage and opening the door for the rest of us. And so now there will be 4 generations who will travel.
Okay. Um, what does this milestone, 50 years of Cape Verde independence, mean to you, to your family? Considering that at the time of the Declaration of Independence, there were some countries that considered that Cape Verde was not it. Cape Verde as an independent nation was not possible.
Julius, do you want to speak to this?
Well, we experienced some of that here. There were factions that didn't think that the PAIGC or whoever the party was going to take control of the government, that they were appropriate. I said that the people who put their life on the line should get to represent the country of Cape Verde. And when I got back, it was 1976, and they had the celebration in the United States, and President Ford was coming to Massachusetts, and Senator
Was it Kennedy?
no, Ed was senator. He said,
It wasn't Ted Kennedy.
no, it was African American.
Oh,
Ed, he was a Republican. Ed Brooks. Ed Brooks. Senator Ed Brooks was the Republican that was going to receive President Ford for the kickoff of 1976. And Senator Edward Brooks asked certain people to come to his office. He asked me to come to his office, along with Ray Almeida and other Cape Verdeans. And he wanted to know about Cape Verde. How was it going to fare in the world as a new government? And there were some Cape Verdeans in the room who said, we need to go over there and see what's going on. And And Ray and I, who had been there with the freedom fighters, we said, these individuals put their life on the line for independence. They have a right to run the country. And Senator Brooks agreed. He said, that's the message that I'm going to give to President Ford, that this is a democratic republic and they have the right to enjoy independence and control of the government. It was very impressive. That pride just overwhelms me all the time when I'm around people. That genuine pride.